And we are now live.
All right, thank you. The Senate Appropriations Committee, and we're back to the budget adjustment language, and it has to do with language that would be added that would provide the authority for the Department of Taxes to share data with the Department of Labor to help with the situation created by the data breach of the 1099s that were sent out in error. So we have Commissioner Bolio with us. We have Brittany Wilson with us, and Damian Leonard. And so we wanted you to come in because the Secretary Young had requested both the House and Senate Appropriations Chair to consider language to give this authorization and use the budget adjustment as a vehicle to do it, simply because of the timing and the fact that this bill would be one that could move through the process very quickly. So my understanding is that you've testified in front of House Appropriations, and I believe that their plan was to get the final touches on the amendments to the budget adjustment, and then they would concur tomorrow with further amendment and ship it back to us. So it would be very soon. What seems to be what we need to, on the Senate side, need to sort out is Senate Economic Development just passed out a bill, S81, that does exactly the same thing. So I'm a little confused as to who made the request. Are we making parallel requests, and exactly, or perhaps Damian's there? I know he drafted the language that was sent to us by Secretary Young. So if you could please just give us some background, and we'll try to reconcile the fact that we've got two bills that seem to be providing the same language. So with that, Commissioner Bolio, or I don't know, or Brittany, who's going to provide the testimony in terms of what the language does and why you're requesting it?
Damian, do you want to start with what we just did in terms of explaining the language, and then I can kind of explain the scenario?
Sure, I can do that. Does it help the committee if I put the document up on the screen?
Sure.
Okay, great. I'll do that very quickly. I've got my summary of this down to a little elevator speech at this point, so hopefully we'll be good. What this is in the sections that govern when the Commissioner of Taxes can release information from tax returns. Currently,
Oh, maybe this isn't data breach related then, is it? It's different than data breach.
It is data breach related. So the current reason is for establishing the identity or liability of employers for unemployment. Mm-hmm. Language that we're re-adding here on lines 11 through 13 would add back in the purpose of verifying the earnings of individuals for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. And these are the benefits for self-employed individuals who are out of work due to COVID-19. We enacted this last year. It expired on January 15th, and the program has been extended by the federal government. So we need to reenact it to allow for income verification. And then on lines 14 through 18 here, that it would also add in for the purpose of verifying and correcting personally identifiable information to create and issue tax documents for individuals who receive benefits through unemployment insurance and related federal and state benefit programs administered by the Department of Labor. And that gets to the 1099 issue, which Brittany and the commissioner can talk about in more detail in a minute. But what that basically allows the Department of Taxes to do is to let the Department of Labor know when they've found that there's a mismatch between their information and the Department of Labor's information on the 1099. So it's part of that verification process. And again, Brittany and the commissioner can talk about that more in a moment. What's labeled as section B here is just a repeal of the personally identifiable information allowance on this coming July 1st, because the tax season will be passed, and at that point, the need for this information will no longer exist. And then in section C, we're repealing the income verification for individuals receiving pandemic unemployment assistance on July 1 of next year. So something like 15 months from now. And the reason for this is because the way the income verification works for pandemic unemployment assistance, it is done through an audit. You self-certify when you apply for benefits, and then the department will go back in and spot audit to make sure individuals weren't defrauding the department with their certification. So those are the three provisions that the House considered earlier today and is putting in their amendment for the BAA, which will presumably be on its way to you. These are identical to what is in S81. So it's really just a question of which vehicle it goes through in. I think the feeling might have been that the Budget Adjustment Act is going to move more quickly. And since the time is of the essence with this, that may be the reason why they've asked to put it in budget adjustment. But with that, I'll take questions or let Brittany or the commissioner fill in the other details.
Okay. So we have this language now, and the House has approved it as an amendment to the BAA that they're sending back to us, which should probably come back by the end of the week. And hopefully we can just concur and it's done. So any comments from the tax perspective, Commissioner Bolio? Any considerations as far as you're concerned relative to what we're doing here?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Craig Bolio, Tax Commissioner for the record. Yeah, I think, all tax information is confidential unless there is a specific exemption that allows us to share it. That includes sending it out to individuals or other state agencies. There's the limited exception that exists in the language today for the Department of Labor, but that's only for the identity or liability of employers, not employees. In talking with the Department of Labor, this will provide one extra tool in the toolkit for them to make sure that the files are as accurate as possible. I would say generally this issue of mismatched information is not abnormal. We have an abnormality this year in that there was the data breach associated with it, but there are a number of reasons that somebody's information may not match between the Department of Labor and the Department of Taxes. Could be different formatting for names. It could be that folks have gotten married or divorced since filing taxes or filing for unemployment benefits. It could be that a claimant or a taxpayer transposed a social security number when filing with either agency, right? So the percentage that we were able to send back so far to the Department of Labor, we could do so in an aggregated fashion because that's not releasing any individual's tax information, but we can't send the detail file without this change. Mechanically, what we would be talking about at the tax department is taking the files from the Department of Labor. Sorry, let me silence that. Apologies. We'd be talking about taking the files from the Department of Labor, and we get those files from them every year because we use it for tax administration. We have already run the analysis for those files, and we have detailed files essentially ready to go. We have to do a little bit of cleanup before we send that back. And this would be a limited release of that tax information, and that we would have received social security numbers and names from the Department of Labor. We would only send back individual records where they don't match the data that we have. And we would be sending back the name that we have in our database for those social security numbers. And what that would trigger on the Department of Labor side, and I'm happy to let Brittany speak more of this, is that will require additional review on their end, right? That will just be another tool for them to triangulate what's the correct information, right? Because there are legitimate reasons that our data may be mismatched. The downstream effects, if we don't do this, are a very real possibility of delayed refunds for those folks who haven't matched, because the tax department, wherever possible, whether it be from 1099s from the Department of Labor or 1099s from a business or a W-2 from a business, we run automated checks wherever we can between what a taxpayer submits to us and what an agency or a business submits to us. And if those don't match, it requires additional human review. So that can create some delays. This that we're asking for is a 1-year exception to that. So the service that the Department of Taxes would be providing in this case is not a normal service that we provide, right? Businesses could have the wrong social security number for their employees. We don't normally do that kind of check. The reason that we're talking about it this year is just because of the unique position that the Department of Labor is in, that they have so many documents coming, right? That because it's such a large entity, even though 4 to 7% mismatch is the normal mismatch rate, the volume is much higher. And so we think this is a worthwhile exercise as a 1-year exercise to get that file as accurate as possible. And I'm also aware the Department of Labor is doing other, longer term process improvements such that this check would not be necessary in future years. But again, would be very happy to defer to Brittany on details of that.
Okay. You want to fill in the blanks then, Brittany, here from the Department of Labor?
Brittany Wilson, Deputy Chief of Staff, Office of the Governor. For the record, the Governor asked me to deploy to labor to help respond and recover from the 1099 mailing incident. So that's my purpose in this conversation. The Commissioner gave a really great overview of why we're seeking this. Just to provide a couple more details on the validation and review process. We have a contract with a vendor called Veris. That vendor has already run this information as well and provided match, non-match rates, which are similar to what we received from the tax department. We're also running a validation through Department of Motor Vehicles. And as well, we expect to see similar rates back from them. But as the Commissioner mentioned, using the 3 validation processes to really analyze the data and ensure that we're providing the best information that we have available to us as a state to the claimants in hopes that it'll ease the burden of filing this year and hope to reduce the number of errors for whatever reason there are errors. I know the Commissioner just mentioned a few really good examples that we have seen in just terms of pulling some mismatched data out of the returns. I think the biggest piece is, we just feel like we owe it to claimants after the year they've been through and the faulty mailings of some 1099s. I think that there's the other 2 validation processes plus some manual validations happening at the Department of Labor that are robust and strong, and we can move forward. But I think it's good to have this tool in the toolbox. And again, it doesn't hurt to have additional spot checks in data so that we can ensure that these don't go out to the wrong individuals again.
Questions committee might have? So you're going to run, I just need to, since I've got to report this out, what you would be doing is matching Department of Labor files against tax files. And then when there is a discrepancy in the data, then it will throw out an edit or would identify something as a mismatch needing to be reconciled. How does this help identify if somebody's data is being used improperly? Or maybe it's not for that purpose at all. Maybe it's just for making sure that the records between the businesses and between employees are absolutely accurate, that we're working from. Is that what this is designed to do. If you could just be a little clearer, I'm maybe the only one that I understand why you want to match in that way. It could help identify discrepancies, which then will be followed up and reconciled and aligned. That happens routinely, but the volume here seems to be perhaps greater. So, so is it really to make sure that the files are as clean and as accurate as possible in both departments?
Yes, but it also can provide data and information in terms of socials or names or other information being used incorrectly. That's one of the pieces of the 3 different validation efforts.
So are you using Numadent then?
No, I don't. I'm not familiar with that, but
Numadent is a file with Social Security that verifies Social Security numbers. I just was wondering whether that was a file that you were, but okay.
No, so the VERIS validation check, the DMV validation check, and then the tax department validation check. The data points would provide an opportunity for us to see if there's any patterns. There are some cases where names had no social security match at all or no social associated with them. Those are, pockets of data that we'd take a closer look at to see if it was misuse of social security numbers. So that is a benefit on top of, the initial effort that we're trying to pursue here in terms of providing correct info, but it will provide a lot of insight into possible fraud.
Okay. Can you get, okay. So possible fraud would be where someone got this information and then might be attempting to file on behalf of that individual whose identity has been stolen for a tax refund. Is that one of the concerns that you might have?
No concerns in terms of fraud happening because of the faulty 1099 mailing, but prior to this, there are circumstances where individuals around the nation and states have seen an increase in the number of cases of fraud. So I just want to be clear, like, this isn't because we believe there's any fraud or identity theft because of the mailing.
Okay.
But the fraud that was occurring beforehand.
Okay. All right.
And Madam Chair, to speak more generally to that, I mean, the tax department system every year is built to try to catch returns that are based on identity theft. So to the degree, if there was any, we believe that the system we have set up at the tax department is designed to catch that anyway.
Okay. So I guess then the more recent problems with the 1099s, obviously they're not accurate, and then if people can't really use them for their tax purposes if they're not correct. I mean, they've got to have the correct one. But you're really trying to get the integrity of the extended benefits that were paid out, that making sure that they were done as accurately as possible. I'm just really struggling with what is your goal. I can see where you're trying to make sure the data is clean, that everybody has got the proper name, social security number, and whatever for identification. And then this would detect improper payments for the PUA and the integrity of that program. I just want to be clear on what you have for identified the rationale for feeling this needs to be done.
Right.
Because what you've said now is the 1099 isn't really the issue. This is something that predated it. I think that's what you said a couple minutes ago.
Only in terms of the fraud. In terms of fraud happening, I don't believe that the 1099 mailing incident is the issue. So the purposes of the validation efforts surrounding personal information is that in order to ensure we have a strong claimant file with names and socials matching and addresses matching, so then we can also validate the unemployment benefits that claimants received. So those things need to match as well as the benefit amount. So,
well, let me ask this. If the 1099 problem did not exist, would you still need to do this? And the answer, I think, is yes.
Yeah, if I could speak to that, Madam Chair. I mean, the ultimate goal of this specific exercise is to minimize delays of tax refunds for this population down the line. Because this, again, taking away the 1099-G mailing issue that occurred, this percentage of mismatch in records is a normal percentage of mismatch. It's the significant increase of the volume for the Department of Labor that makes this a worthwhile exercise, right? The alternative would be if we didn't do this and the Department of Labor didn't do this validation, we would have, several thousand claimants whose information won't match in our system, and that would become a human review necessary at the tax department. And so, at the end of the day, those people would get the refunds that they're entitled to, but it would take longer than if we did this check up front. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, thank you. That's helpful.
Sure.
And for many people, particularly if they've been getting the unemployment and so forth, their tax refunds, well, some of them could have a tax liability, but the refunds are generally eagerly awaited for. So,
that's right.
Okay. Other questions? Committee? Okay.
If we're done this one, I'd like to get Commissioner Bolio's phone number because I need to talk with him about a different issue.
He could probably shoot you an email.
Offline, Senator. Sorry.
Email
you.
you
An email. Okay. Then committee, the budget adjustment's going to have this language. Damien says it's exactly the same. What we're considering, it's what the House is putting in, it's what the Commerce put in. Where I was really getting confused is because their focus has been so much on the UI and the 1099 problem. That's why I was thinking on Friday's discussion in Senate Economic Development that this was in response to all the work or the time that they've been spending on the 1099 problem. But I think I understand now that the magnitude of the problem, the number of files where probably there is going to be a need to reconcile, and trying to do that in such a way as not to delay income tax returns or processing. Okay. All right. Because this is a whole new area. Normally, Department of Labor, are they sending out 1099s? Is that something new, or is that something they've been doing with unemployment insurance benefits right along?
Something they've been doing all along.
Okay.
Probably more so to the magnitude of a maximum of 15 to 20,000 a year, not there's over 101,000 claimants from 2020, but because of the various programs, there's nearly 180,000 1099s being produced.
Okay. Cool. Compared to 30?
Yeah, I would say on the high end.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a normal year.
What? I'm sorry.
In a normal year, it's just the unemployment insurance program that they're dealing with. This year, they've got all the different federal programs.
Oh, I know. It just shows.
So it's.
It just shows the tremendous workload that getting this money out has created. All right. Other questions? Brittany or Damien or Craig, while we have them? If not,
some of us have to go to another meeting.
I know, Senator Sears. And so it's with that reason I'm asking if there are no more questions, I'm going to just adjourn the committee for today. And thanks, folks, for coming in and explaining what this language is designed to do and the purpose. So thank you for coming in. And with